too many.
I feel like you were borderlining on jazz hands at the end of that.
Oh boy, oh boy, Matt. I'm excited about this one because I've come to some points about it that are. This will change over the course of the episode. All right, fine.
Okay, there.
All right,
There.
Today's episode is the push for multiplayer games.
Mm-hmm.
We're not pushing for multiplayer ourselves, strictly speaking, but we certainly feel like, well, this is just a thing that always kind of happens, and it's happened more in some very interesting ways in the last a few years because of how prevalent the internet is and how the internet has changed the way we access games and the way we play now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the thing that I was dwelling on, and the thing that I know that I had always thought about, having played games for many years, is that I cannot think of any game where it would not have benefited from some form of multiplayer component, or a multiplayer game that would not have benefited from some form of a single-player component. Now, most multiplayer games have at least some single-player component to them, especially when you had to sell somebody on a complete package. There are games that are meant to be played multiplayer with at least one other player, but they still find things for you to do, and even a basic example is to get a book on chess problems, set up the problem, and then try to solve it with the moves that you would make. So it's like here, like they give you a bunch of pieces, and you say solve this in two moves. Like, okay, well, I go here, I do that. That doesn't work, and then you work your way through it. Now, I also don't think that every game needed a multiplayer mode to be as robust or as well designed or as complete as the single player experience, but there's always been something that I feel could have been added to a complete single player game just to, extend the longevity of it a little bit. I would play Ocarina of Time, and I would think, man, you know what I would really like? Like a one-on-one deathmatch with another Link character. Just the two of them, Z-targeting each other, circling around, whipping out different items, and just trying to, get the drop on the other person. I would enjoy that. I can understand a lot of people be like, we don't need that, and I'm saying we don't need it, but multiplayer in games has, for the most part, been a great addition to a package, to making you feel like you got more out of it. But it's changed because now, like I said about the internet, it's not always the case. Matt, where are you right now in terms of multiplayer?
Well, it really is an example-to-example thing. I mean, when I think about especially a push for multiplayer components, multiplayer parts, one of the biggest things I think of is Spec Ops The Line, where the developers have actually gone on record saying, we were told we had to add a multiplayer mode, and we felt like we weren't able to refine the story mode as much as we would have liked because of that. Now, obviously, multiplayer mode adds life to the game. It means it stays on your shelf. It means you don't just beat it and then resell it. I mean, I was playing Warhammer 40k Space Marine. I did some of the multiplayer, but generally speaking, I beat the single player, or normal. I beat the single player hard. And then I wasn't really too motivated to come back to the multiplayer a lot. It was okay. It wasn't great, that kind of stuff. But we have Spec Ops The Line, which is a game everyone remembers for the story, for really kind of getting into the player's head and challenging a lot of habits and thoughts we may not realize we had concerning first-person, shooters, it was third-person, war, shooters, all that stuff. And I think, this is what people remember it for. This is why people will pick up the game so long after it came out, because of those messages. And I think, it could have... Are you telling me the single-player campaign could have been even better if they didn't have to ham-fist in a multiplayer mode, which nobody plays anymore?
Yeah. You're right. The single-player was, groundbreaking in a lot of ways. So I wouldn't put it there. Now you're saying there was a multiplayer mode into it? I don't even remember that being an option. I thought they just didn't have one.
It was there.
Okay, no.
I saw some videos for it. I remember one of the reviews I saw actually commented on the multiplayer saying it was lackluster, and And again, the developers had an interview and they said, we really wish we didn't put multiplayer in it, but that's what the publisher wanted from us. And multiplayer will always extend the life of the game. It encourages people to buy the game as soon as the release is possible because you want to get in there while the multiplayer community is hot. It wants to. Like, I bought Anarchy Reigns. It was a really fun game. There's a decent, like, I think it's pretty safe to say that game was multiplayer focused. It had a token campaign for single player, which was it was there to punch people.
Yeah.
But it was multiplayer focused, and because I didn't really join in it as soon as it came out, it was really hard to find a match. And I'm sure if I were to pop it in my system right now and try again, no one would be playing it anymore. And so multiplayer simultaneously adds life to a game and also encourages you to get it as soon as possible because that's when it's most likely you'll find somebody else. You want to load up Borderlands 1 now and see if you'll find anybody online? You're not going to find anyone online.
You know, I started playing, I asked my friend if I could borrow his Kid Icarus Uprising and I logged onto the multiplayer for that, not expecting there to be any players. I had to wait in the lobby for a little while, but 6 players got together to play the multiplayer. I was surprised, but I guess delighted by it. Now with Spec Ops in specific, okay, I'm a little not on the right about it, but I'm certain that if they had extra hours, extra manpower, extra resources to take what makes the single player gameplay enjoyable, because the gameplay had to be good, otherwise people wouldn't even sit through the whole story. The thing about the game is that it starts off as a very typical war story, but then it breaks down over the course of the game. And in order to get that far, the gameplay has to be good, and the gameplay was good.
I thought it was kind of average. I didn't have any problems with it, but it most certainly didn't do anything exciting for me. It was just standard third person, occasionally shoot glass out to cover someone in sand.
Yeah. Well, my enjoyment in single player games does come from of how well the AI is programmed, and I thought that the AI in Spec Ops was above average. There were some people who, by design, were going to run at you and try to scare you and get you out of there and even stab you. But then there was a lot of different kinds of troops that employed a lot of different kinds of tactics. And also, your guys weren't dumb. They were smart allies that you can use effectively. And that balance between them, they weren't doing everything for you, but they weren't useless. It was a really, really good balance of that. Now, I think at that point you knew that the story was worth checking out, so you probably didn't even think about that as much as you thought about going through the story. And I remember playing it on the harder difficulties and being kind of annoyed because I did want to see what was happening next, and I got sick of dying so much. So towards the end of the game, I turned down the difficulty just to finish the story. But there are still core components of the game that are enjoyable. The cover shooting, even if somebody else has done it before, is still enjoyable. A squad-based tactical combat can work. So what I think happened there is there wasn't enough analysis on how this would have worked in a good multiplayer setting. And so it just turned into whatever assets that we have, some stages, some characters, some guns, run around and shoot each other. Yeah, that won't hold up. But multiplayer isn't multiplayer unless it has to be good, and it wasn't good. So there you go with that one. Not that but I can definitely see, like, in the development process, if they don't even care, if they get any extra resources and time and money and manpower, which are all resources, I can understand, be like, listen, we don't care. This isn't what this game is about. But again, in my original point, there could have been a good one. There could have been something really interesting that makes people come back and play. Probably a smaller community overall. It won't surpass Counter-Strike, but something could have been done, for sure.
Another thing I think a lot of people think of when I think of multiplayer-focused games would probably be Call of Duty. Let's face it, the story has always been tripe on a fucking stick.
I think I've always treated the Call of Duty stories as something really for American audiences, kind of obvious, but also not just for that, but for young American audiences. I think for a lot of young Americans, their country loves war, and a lot of their industry is based off their fighting spirit.
You also think they did far better in the World Wars than they actually did.
Yeah,
right. Sorry, we're not supposed to talk about that.
We're gonna need their help if shit goes down. So let's let them be the heroes. While we just be the guys in the back, with pulleys and cables and stuff, doing the work and cleaning up after them.
But anyways,
they're also bigger targets. I mean, we haven't been attacked the way they've been attacked, and it's a very, very sensitive issue, in my opinion. But anyways, the kids like 13, 14, and I think they get the game, and I hope to God that they at least played through the single player story at least once just to see.
Aren't those games usually mature or older or teen at least?
No, they're rated M for mature. But we had a whole thing about this. For me, those ratings have nothing to do with the actual in-game maturity.
Well, I'm saying they shouldn't be sold those games.
They get them.
Yeah.
Have you listened to them on voice chat?
Mm-hmm.
I once did that. I wasn't even of age, but my buddy wanted me to buy Playboy the Mansion for him, and they didn't even card me, which they should have. They just assumed that I was mature enough to get it. So I mean, I guarantee you it happens all the time, and for good reason, because those are probably the players that they intend to get. By the time they're out of college, I'm sure most of them peter off or went to war and are already dead. That was mean. But when they're young and they're growing up, there's so much to war that they don't understand, and yet it's so ingrained in their culture. I mean, there was a Call of Duty scene where they're at a funeral for a fallen soldier, and there's a button prompt to lay your hand on the casket. I'm sure I would have written that as a joke 4 years ago. And it's I can.
The funeral goes on indefinitely. By the way, if you don't do it, there's been plenty of people who've just done that and walked away, and just nothing happens until you press F to pay respects.
You must understand, this is part of it. You have to mourn the dead. Mourn the dead.
And time will literally stand still until you do. I mean, there's still wind effects for some reason.
Yeah. Call of Duty has warped into something that is, in many ways, important to the Americanized culture. But the multiplayer is where it's at. Multiplayer in Call of Duty was always good. I mean, people still rave about Call of Duty's 2 multiplayer. Mm. Call of Duty 2's multiplayer. Mm. The one thing that I can think of about multiplayer where it was just done really asinine, and I know this isn't the full crux of the discussion. It was the Zelda Four Swords, where you needed Game Boy Advances to. Yeah. I've never even had the chance to experience that yet because I can't. I don't have 4 Game Boy Advances, and they didn't update it so you can connect 4 3DSs to a Wii U. Which, by the way, now's a good time to do the Four Swords thing.
I think, a lot more people have 3DSs than they have Wii U's because 3DS is currently the absolute dominator of the portable market.
You only need 1 Wii U and 4 3DSs. And God forbid all 4 of them have to buy a copy. Fine. But at the very least...
God, there's Download Play. I don't understand why you can't just use Download Play, because that... Well, I mean, you can actually only buy 1 copy of Zelda Triforce Heroes and have 2 people using Download Play.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, okay. Well, then there you go. It's not...
See?
Yeah. Now, the sad part about that is that the multiplayer was actually quite good. It was really interesting because you had the 4 links running around, fighting crime and saving shit, and it was and competing with each other for rupees, and it was supposed to.
You could throw a jar on someone's head. Could you do that? Because when I did when I did the Link to the Past, it came with a multiplayer mode, and one of the things you could do is pick up a jar and throw it, and it lands on someone else's head, and they literally lose their entire screen.
I'm sure you could have. I'm sure. Oh, you mean
well, you'd have to throw it, but specifically. But yeah, it would poop on their head, and on their screen, all they could see was their character and the heads-up display. The entire environment disappeared, and you could easily run off a cliff.
Well, that I don't know, but I'm going to assume there's at least some kind of shenaniganery going on. And yeah, it was just inaccessibility is what kept a lot of us who really wanted to play it from getting it, and it costs money for the company for the experiment. Now, nowadays, we've entered this...
Oh, don't forget Crystal Chronicles Final Fantasy.
Oh, yeah, there was another one. Yeah. Another one that I didn't buy because, again, why would I? I'm not gonna get the full experience out of it.
It also, like, in a Final Fantasy game, you're going to limit my button presses to 2 and then have me use shoulder buttons to move things around, to go through the option wheel. This is, you've basically crippled me in multiple ways because you want me to use this peripheral. I mean, I had one, so I played it single player, but what the hell, guys?
Yeah. It was nice that the single player at least let you play with the game controller, but I agree with your point. Nowadays, we have an unprecedented medium in gaming. And I guess not completely nowadays, because multi-user dungeons and MMOs have been around for 25, 30 years?
Possibly.
Yeah. So that's not completely new anymore. But lately, arena games and MOBAs have become very popular.
Mm-hmm.
And some of these do not have any single player whatsoever, nor do they want any single player in there. At the most, you'll get some tutorial missions, some to help you learn the concepts and the mechanics of the game. But that's just to get you. Even if you want to face AI, you have the option to face that with other players, as opposed to you and some AI versus other AI. Although you can do that, it's not this. As crazy as it might sound, I actually feel like MOBAs, or arena games as I prefer to call them, has distilled gaming into its most basic form, and is a very pure expression of what gaming is. Because in the way that somebody looks at these games and calls them esports, I look at sports and I consider them games. The game of soccer itself is only possible once you have at least 2 people, preferably 6 or 7 per team or whatever. But when the players get together, the game of soccer becomes the entity, and that is and it only exists for as long as they are playing. And then once the game is over, the game dissipates, and you stop being soccer players and you go back to whatever it is. And the same thing happens with the arena games. The game of Dota doesn't actually begin until all 10 players log in and pick their characters and get to fighting. When it's over, that game of Dota dissipates. Or in this case, it can be saved as a replay for later use. But that to me is this is what a game is. It's this slight shift in reality, in that we agree on a set of abstract rules to abide by in order to have fun and to compete with one another. And it's beautiful. It's it's one of the best things, and it's the reason why I will always have at least one arena game on my plate, because it has so perfectly captured what a game actually is.
Well, I personally find, multiplayer, I have no problem with multiplayer in general. Multiplayer as a general concept is great, yeah. I like it. I find that there's a lot of push for it right now for a lot of the wrong reasons.
Okay.
A lot of games have shifted to a very cooperative focus. I used Borderlands as an example earlier. So this is basically a game where you play it, you enjoy it, and now you've turned into a spokesperson from the game. Because let's say I play, Bioshock 1. And I enjoy Bioshock 1. And I am telling you, hey, there's this game called Bioshock, whatever. You can basically pick it up whenever you want. You can do it at your own leisure. You can whatever. If I'm enjoying something such as Borderlands 2, I'm saying, hey, I play Borderlands. I really like Borderlands. You should play Borderlands. The fact that it's a cooperative mode and a lot of the game gets better.
We can play it together.
Yes, so I've essentially turned into a spokesperson from the game, trying to pull you into the game on my timetable, which may be when the game hasn't really dropped down from a $50 price tag.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, I think a lot of publishers have understood that, and I think that's one of the reasons why there's a push for cooperative play. Cooperative play also, for better or worse, extends the life, because I can do all of Portal's map, or Portal 2's cooperative maps, and wow, that was fun. And then I have a new friend who basically is looking for something like, hey, why don't you buy Portal 2, and we can do this together. Now, that's not necessarily the best example, because Portal 2 has a fantastic single player, so even if you never touch the multiplayer, it's still a fantastic game.
Yeah.
But we're really, I feel, going towards the point where single player is becoming less and less relevant, because publishers have realized you can extend the life of games by making them multiplayer focused, and especially in the cooperative front, you can become a spokesperson. If I like a game and it has a cooperative mode, I am slightly motivated to go up to my friends and say, "Hey, why don't we play this game together?"
Yeah, it can be upsetting if you get really skilled at playing a single player game and then have nowhere to express that. I think one of the great things about playing a multiplayer version of a game that you mastered on single player is that it's that next step in your development of being good at this game. And it's like you can only face level 9 CPUs for so long before they stop being a challenge and you need to start playing other people who think differently, who react differently, who approach the game differently. I mean, that's the reason why I go to Smash weekly tournaments and monthly tournaments or whatever I can get my hands on. I mean, I guess I call myself a competitive player, but what I'm really trying to do is find the hardest people to fight and then fight, because that's how I'm getting better at the game.
There's also, you think about the game Titanfall, which came out a while ago.
Yeah.
That was a purely online experience.
This Titanfall, Evolve was another one.
Yeah, well, Evolve you
There's
can
a few
at
of
least...
these.
No, the Evolve you can at least play offline with the computer. Titanfall, its campaign mode was actually multiplayer, and you needed other human beings to populate the map. There was no offline single player for Evolve. It was entirely multiplayer focused. The story mode essentially was done during the loading screens with exposition, and then you'd have people talking over things in the actual matches. And basically, the story mode was really bad because no matter what side won, it had to move on.
Right, so the victory wouldn't even matter if it didn't lend itself to the story.
Yeah, and again, that was a full $60 price game, and many of the Call of Duties and Battlefields, again, have put really bad single players just to justify its existence and charge a full $60 price tag. Total Biscuit did a very nice breakdown of Medal of Honor Warfighter, where he just showed how disgustingly horrible the single player campaign was. He acquainted it and many other modern day shooters to Dragon's Lair broken up with occasional shooting segments. There's a very interesting test he did where you had to laze a building in order to mark it for an aerial bombardment. And if you didn't, and you went too far in, you were just plain sniped. So he even did an experiment where he took out his gun, he was able to kill every sniper there was there, couldn't find a single one, took a few steps forward, oops, must have slipped. And the story would not do anything till he lazed the building. And then at which point he goes there, and it's a mini cutscene, so you're walking but your gun's down, so you can't do anything. And then you go into robot mode, so you can go in and explore. It's like the segment there. I was thinking, if the entire game is this is stupid. Like if this is
it's like it's on rails, but not clearly. It's like it's the illusion that you have more to do when you can't. So it's really just putting you on this fixed track. I mean, I'm okay with an on-rails shooter when they're okay with it, when they clearly are showing you it, right? That's fine. But it's when it's making you think that you're playing it a certain way when it's not. It's just like, that's just bad conduct.
Yeah, even the new Call of Duty, the Black Ops 3 thing, is kind of aware how much people like the multiplayer mode. Like, supposedly there's a story mode. I don't know too much about it, but apparently one of the zombie modes has a story mode to it. Like, there's regular zombies, I think. I don't know. And then they've got an alternative zombie mode, which is sort of a 1970s thing. You actually play as one of 4 characters with names and personalities.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one. That was Nixon, I think Kennedy, and then, God, there was 2 other characters. I think Fidel Castro was one of them, and then one other one who I think was a Russian delegate, but I'm blanking on that one. But yeah, I know, like, oh no, it was the secretary. It wasn't a Russian. It was I can't remember his name though. But yeah, that was actually really funny, and I enjoyed that.
Well, I mean, don't they have that, and they have regular zombies?
Yeah, I think I can't even remember which Call of Duty it was, to be honest with you.
But I feel like we are losing a lot on the single player front, because when I think back on games I've really enjoyed, they've all really been single player. Like, I've had great moments in Dota. I'm not gonna die, and I probably will have other great moments in Dota. There's been a lot of fun stuff in Guild Wars too, But, Bioshock stuck with me. Unreal 2 stuck with me, which was Unreal, not Unreal Tournament. Which is really weird, because when you look back on it, parts of me think, how did I enjoy this game? And then I replay a bit, and it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, it's got quirks, but that doesn't mean it's bad. It's always those, it's the stories that stick with us. Like, the experiences are kind of what serve the immediate high, the immediate, go for this, do this thing. Yeah. You'll never find a more tough opponent than another human being. You'll always have these moments where you're trying to go around and shoot people. You'll always have these moments in Dota 2 where you're arranging the perfect gank, and those feel good. But it's really the stories that stick with you. It's what happened in Bioshock that stuck with me, not necessarily the gameplay, although the gameplay was fun.
Yeah. For me, sorry, go ahead, keep going.
And just kind of derailed me.
Sorry. Okay, well, for me, the thing that sticks isn't. Yes, stories do stick with me, but the thing in specific in a single player mode that really sticks with me are sequences. When you are being tested in, say, certain skill capacities to get through a certain sequence, like a Half-Life 2 was one sequence after another. There were motorboat sequences. There was a driving part. There was like a zombie survival part. There are also some stuff towards the end where you and a group of rebels are fighting the Combine, and that sequence was taking you through city streets, and you can see people like running for their lives and Combine chasing after them, and the story gave you the sense that this fighting is going on all over the city. And that was a great thing to help you be more of the mindset of what Gordon Freeman is going through at that moment. But you being able to go through that, and it still tested your skill, and it's still a game. It's just it guided you on a path because it wanted to see how well you've progressed as a shooting person, and give you a few new tricks as well, like having some people to command, even though some people said it didn't work out, but I was fine with it. And yeah, when you don't focus on making your single player game a great game to just play, then you do lose a lot of those really fun sequences. It's like the best parts of movies are the ones where something goes down and then and then the scene is about that thing going down. Like I recently watched Kingsman in Secret Service, and the movie itself was like a lot of
violence porn,
a lot of world building, and then some outbursts. But that sequence where he's in the church and he's fighting his way through all the gay haters, I'm like, okay, this is really entertaining. Well, I'll watch this a few times because they put a lot of work into it. There was a lot of coordination.
That was one shot.
It was a very difficult scene. Well, no, they broke it out, right? Because they cut to the villains watching it happen. So they probably were able to do a few breaks. But most of it took place in fewer takes, more impressive. I'm like, this is great. I'm going to watch this a few times just because they put a lot of work into this and I'm entertained by it. And that's the kind of thing that I enjoy the most out of these single-player experiences. A game like Elder Scrolls Skyrim is great because you basically make your own sequence. Like, you decide to go on this quest and to go look into some dragons, and you and a bunch of people are walking around, and a dragon shows up. I'm like, I feel like I had a hand in making this happen. So now, not only is it a sequence, but it's mine. Is that a Nirnroot? Oh shit! And I run over to grab it, and it's great to also have a little bit of say in they give you some things are gonna be the way they are, but then they let you do some of it your own way too. So that way you get to have ownership, and you can tell me about your Skyrim story, and I can tell you about my Skyrim story, and they'll be different.
Well, I mean, Skyrim or Elder Scrolls is a fantastic example because I think the general opinion of the Elder Scrolls MMO was, we can MMO too! Oh, fuck, okay, that's what Yahtzee said. But, well, lots of people said it's just... Yeah, and it was... No one really... Very few people thought that any part of it worked. It was buggy as all hell. The reason why the various races decided to split into 3 factions were non-existent. And it was basically it basically was, the company said, MMOs make money, we have a world, let's make an MMO. Because those are the kind of things where you can charge a monthly fee for them, where you can keep them alive in those means, and then we all saw what happened, it went free to play.
Oh, it's free to play?
I don't know, actually. That may not. I remember Knights of the Old Republic did that.
Well,
Like,
if it's not free to play yet, it will be.
Yeah, Knights of the Old Republic actually is a very interesting example because it's considered most enjoyable one played single player. Like the story campaign is considered one of the best that there or a really fun experience. It's really nice to do, but the problem is you can shoot through the whole thing in a month. And that's kind of where the game was strong and weak. It was strong because like, wow, that was an amazing month to play, but then at the end of it, yeah, well, I've kind of done all the classes I was interested in, and why am I going to pay a subscription fee for a second month?
Yeah.
If they had built Knights of the Old Republic to be a single-player game with cooperative elements...
You keep saying Knights, but it was just the Old Republic.
If they had built the Old Republic... Thank you about that. If they built the Old Republic to be a single-player game with cooperative elements, like you could bring in your friend for extra party members, or maybe there was some kind of raids or things you can do with your characters to get bonus credits or things like that inside the story. Like, I think it would have been a lot different. It would have been a lot more successful because people could still play it to this day. Right now, if I want to get into the Old Republic, I have to basically download the free version, then figure out what story packs or whatever I have to buy, and basically reconstruct the experience that once upon a time existed.
Yeah, it's tricky in MMORPGs because what I've always enjoyed the most about an MMO has never been the endgame content. It has been the process of developing your character through this journey and hoping that each time you went through a new character, the experience would be different. And the challenge was the game has to be fun in different ways throughout it. And coming back to World of Warcraft, again, of all examples, I think World of Warcraft accomplished it extremely well because of the world PvP aspect. Because no matter what quest you were on, things always became more interesting when you had another faction of enemy human players, or humans controlling many different creatures, plotting against you, planning their attack. Suddenly, like, you don't even think about the quest. You're just like, oh, this guy's coming after me, and it does something naturally that stories sometimes struggle to do, which is to change your perception on what's important, changing your priorities, going from a small, albeit pleasant, fetch quest where you're just trying to pick up some things in the environment to all of a sudden a battle for life or death and for the honor of the Alliance and the Horde, and that it goes from that to that and then back when that guy, pisses off. That's art. And I think the Old Republic wanted to do that, but the trouble was players really do expect more appreciation once the character is leveled up. It's like, we went through the process of leveling up. The least you can do is give us a game to play. And BioWare was like, we gave you a game. If people keep starting it over, then you're always going to encounter players who are always on different journeys. And that the journey should always be a constant thing. It shouldn't be like a bunch of people go on a journey, get to the end, and then no one else goes on the journey. Like, there should always be people taking the journey, and unfortunately they didn't pull that off. But I think in that case, it was just miscommunication between how players treat MMOs and how a developer might want it to. The thing that I thought could have been different in Skyrim is if the map of Skyrim were like a Minecraft server, where you would have up to maybe like 50 to 100 players, all starting at different points in the world, and just kind of running through it. So you would have people closer to the Thieves Guild who would take up the Thieves quests. You had people who were in the Stormcloak Revolution. You had people who were in the Imperial Revolution. And yes, the story would eventually come to a conclusion. The content can only last so long, but it's almost like a very complicated board game because it's like, who's the first person to buy Park Place in Monopoly? Once somebody gets that, that's a huge deal. Well, you got Park Place, you got Boardwalk, this guy is going to mess people up. So when that happens in Skyrim, that would have been really interesting because eventually one person becomes the head of the Thieves Guild. One person takes over the Stormcloaks. One guy killed everybody in Whiterun. I mean, if this were the case, multiplayer Skyrim would always boil down to one person having killed every single other living thing in the map. And that would have been so much fun. And I kind of really want somebody to just do that.
There is, in Elder Scrolls, there is a mod you can do that builds a zombie that basically kills everyone in one hit. If you install another mod, or you can build this particular one yourself. Like the one I saw, it was here's the breakdown for everything you put into it. And then the other mod you got to download from somebody else allowed story important characters to die. So you could do this, spawn the zombie, and just follow it around, and it would eventually kill everyone in the world. Mm-hmm. I mean, it sounds like a very boring way to play the game. But, so, yeah, still, that's a little interesting. I'm also thinking that in the case of your particular vision of Skyrim, they would have to eventually, or they would have to make NPCs able to defend themselves. So if this guy came into the town, they'd have mages who can dispel invisibility and guards who can kill that person pretty quickly.
Yeah, it would be a challenge still.
Yeah, it would be interesting. I think that
because you also have players. Sorry, you also have players who would want to defend the town too. Yeah. So one player can just log on every day and just kind of chill out in Whiterun while he, I don't know, checks in on his kids or whatever, and then he gets a note saying, oh, one of his friends calls him and says, somebody's coming for Whiterun. It's like, oh, okay, I'm on it. And you end up treating this environment as this little tiny micro world that you grow to care about. And the game, like how it would dissipate in Dota or dissipate in soccer, the game of Skyrim would eventually dissipate. But we're talking about something that can take months before it dissipates, like a Dungeons and Dragons campaign. And then it finally does dissipate, and then you had a good time, so you start all over.
Yeah. But essentially, as we're sort of supposed to be talking about the whole push for multiplayer games,
that was my push for what the multiplayer game I want.
Well, it's like you can go to any game store, look at any console right now, and most of them will have cooperative modes. They'll have some kind of multiplayer thing. This is turned into essentially publisher language. Like, you can't make a game unless you have a multiplayer mode. You can't make a game like we want cooperative things. It's starting to dominate the market a lot. It's becoming a lot harder to find a really powerful single player experience. Like as I said, I've been starting StarCraft 2, and I've been getting to the story mode, and I feel like the story mode is really well done. Like, I would not expect something like this from a real-time strategy. I, did the story mode for the Red Alert games, and they were always very cheesy. Like, they knew they were cheesy.
I mean, Red Alert 3 was cheesy, too. They just went for it.
Oh, yeah, like they were having nothing but fun with themselves, and, bless their hearts for that. But it's the fact that we keep going through this, I feel like we are starting to lose out on a lot of single-player experiences. They're becoming fewer and far between. It used to be the point of a game was have an experience yourself, but now you can have a mediocre game with cooperative focus, and it becomes popular and lives longer than it's supposed to. Like, as someone who's a fan of Borderlands 1 and 2, I am one of the biggest critics out there, because Borderlands 2 just started dying off for me. And once, especially when my friends weren't available and I was playing it single player, so many of the flaws started sticking out. I mean, it's really fun when you got a whole bunch of bandits going for you and you're there with your sniper rifle trying to pick off as many as you can. You got the other guy running in with shotguns trying to do it, and you're activating powers. Like, this is a fun scramble, but the moment it's just me on my own, I'm picking off people from a distance with a sniper. I go in there, an extra person comes up, shotgun. Well, he's dead because there's only one person here. The difficulty's been spiked as such. And
yeah, I think one of the most difficult things is that regression from enjoying something with other people and then trying to have that same level of enjoyment on your own.
Well, it also, again, the flaws of the game started being pointed out when I realized the difficulty curve is incredibly all over the place. When I realized that loot drops just aren't existent. I mean, single player, you can't get excited over any loot drop because they're all really bad stuff. You need at least 3 people there to get a gear that's at least worth a look before you sell it. And it just, the experience died off because I was now aware of all these flaws. I lost the euphoria.
Euthanasia is not context appropriate.
Oh shit!
We're just going to pull the plug prematurely on that term. Okay.
Okay, so I lost the euphoria of working together with my friends and having that experience, and now I realize the gunplay is very number based and not really skill based.
Yeah, that's kind of what put me off about playing it altogether. It's like I don't need numbers to come out of people when I shoot them with bullets.
Well, the numbers are always there, whether or not you see them, because it's a code game.
True,
and if
but,
the numbers,
but there are different ways to calculate it. Like, for example, Counter-Strike uses a lot less numbers than Borderlands.
Yes,
but I'm not gonna. I digress.
Yeah, one of the things that annoyed me actually is when I played the Bunkers and Badasses with a friend, that was interesting. But when I played it single player, especially since I was a sniper character, the skeletons, you'd snipe them in the head, it'd do critical damage, but their head would pop off. So they'd still be alive, but now they don't have a weak spot anymore. And, when I've got another teammate who's again running in with shotguns or doing something like that, it made for great synergy because I do massive damage taking their head off, and then they would finish them off. But as a single player, it wasn't really as interesting, and I tried doing it as other classes that weren't necessarily snipers, and it still didn't feel very interesting. And I was, in fact... So I was in the Battleborn beta, and I just remembered I signed a non-disclosure agreement, so I'm not allowed to say anything past that.
I was
different example.
I'll just take over. I was really surprised when I played Diablo 2 because I started playing it online almost right away, and then after a while I decided I wanted to play through single player, and I managed to enjoy it anyways. And I'm not saying that like it was like me forcing enjoyment out of it. I genuinely had a good time playing through it. I picked the Necromancer because I didn't want to be lone when I was running through, so maybe there's a little bit of a problem there. But the thing that I noticed about Diablo 2 is that it balanced multiplayer, single player, almost at the same time. It was like you would exit town and there'd be this huge map, and you can choose to roam as a group, or you can choose to split up and have somebody find the entrance to the next cave or the next path. And somebody would say, "I found it," and then they would open up the portal. Everybody would go through and do that search again. So it was an early take on how some games would later on do MMOs, but better because you didn't always have to stick together. You could even split into 2 groups of 4 and split up, or you can. My favorite was always to just rampage as a single unit and just have everybody run around and clash with those giant groups. From a story perspective, it got the job done. From a sequence perspective, we made it ourselves, and from a gameplay perspective, I just had a blast. And it's still like one of my gaming goals, which is to get 8 people together and run through Diablo 2 together as a group. Not really interested in doing hardcore. I mean, I get it, but I really would rather do softcore so that one person doesn't get to Act 3 and be like, "Well, guys, I'm going home. I'm done. I died." And that's it. That'd be kind of stupid. Can you think of a single player game where you were like, I would have loved if there was a multiplayer version to this? Like for me, Skyrim was one example. Ocarina of Time was another example. I'm trying to think of some other ones. I don't want to spend too long trying to think of something because people are watching or listening to this.
Well, do you want to mention your Bioshock Infinite example?
Yes, actually I do. Okay. Bioshock Infinite could very easily, I don't know what accent that was, it could very easily have justified a multiplayer mode because, spoilers, at the end of the game, well, I have to explain the whole thing. At the end of the game, you find out that there are multiple boogers and multiple Elizabeths, and you even see the other booker. And all they had to do was like set up a map and have a bunch of offices, so the bookers would keep coming out of the office, and all the bookers and all the Elizabeths would like shoot each other, and obviously you couldn't hit Elizabeth. I mean, Clash of the Clouds was basically that. So you just put in a few more bookers, and it would have been a lot of fun. Okay, I'm done.
Okay. Yes, I know. I still need to play that.
It's alright. It's alright. I guess the original Resident Evil probably didn't need, although co-op would have been good. I mean, Chris and Jill, they both move around the mansion at the same time.
Yeah,
that would have been, actually, that would have been great.
Yeah, it's weird because they do have the mercenaries mode now. They started in Resident Evil 4, and it's, I think, in every game since that. And that, I think, would be a very interesting cooperative thing because they're both very much limited. I do know in the new ones that they've added cooperative play, and apparently it's very interesting because it's asymmetrical cooperative. One character will have some abilities, the other character will have other abilities.
Yeah.
So, like, one of the combinations, one character can't use guns, but she can illuminate monsters and point out weak spots. And so you have to then communicate to your partner, like, it's, the kneecap, you shoot them in the kneecap, and then you shoot them in the kneecap that causes the monster to fall over, or something like that. That is an interesting idea. Like, asymmetry in general is something I feel like not a lot of people are doing enough exploration with. Asymmetry in real-time strategy is pretty damn standard. I mean, even if you got two people playing The Empire of the Rising Sun in Red Alert 3,
You're probably going to build different units.
probably, and there's always different mentalities. I remember I played against someone who did Empire of the Rising Sun, and the first thing they did was they took all their cores, basically tried to see how close to my structures they could build their buildings and start pumping out units. And that was very frustrating for the beginning of it because my base was swarmed, but then once I took down his structures, it's like, okay, what's your next step? Still working on it. All right, let me know what you're doing. I've got an airport active.
Yeah, with the new Star Wars Battlefront that just came out, a lot of people are already like signing off of it because for the first few hours it feels great to play. It's a really great Star Wars experience, but experience is for the gamers to create, by and large. You're supposed to develop an environment that allows for many different kinds of things to happen that all would mesh together well as a player dictated sequence. And like for me, one of my favorite moments from Minecraft is a bunch of us are exploring and we start digging into a mine shaft and we drop down, four of us, and then we're under assault by spiders and monsters coming out of the shadows, and it's like, shit, this is intense. Like this is like Diablo level scare tactics going on right over here. This was fun, and it was all us. But Minecraft gave us all the components that we needed to make the game fun for ourselves. It didn't tell us how fun worked. It didn't make us do things a certain way. Because although you can make somebody do something a certain way, that may be fun once, twice, three times if you're lucky. And then after that, it's redundant and there's nothing left. And that's why some of the earlier Battlefields are still remembered very fondly, because it was a lot more loose. You had your vehicles, you had units, you had squads. People would like mess around, do stupid things sometimes, bumping vehicles into each other. But ultimately, the majority of the experience was for the players. And I think developers, if you really want players to appreciate and to stick with the multiplayer game throughout through a long time, hopefully until the sequel comes out, they need to feel like they can take as much pride in saying, I play Battlefield as I play soccer. And it needs to feel like a set of skills that you just take with you and that you can always go back to. Like, I remember how to play soccer. I remember how to play Dota. I can leave Dota for a few years, come back, check on the updates, and get back into it because I remember how the skills worked. The other thing that I want to touch on, and then I'm going to wrap up my end of it, is the issue with single-player gaming in the AAA space is that however much the gameplay has improved, it's the visuals and the sound and the presentation that has been pressured to improve, maybe even more so than it has to the point where it is so expensive to make the games look and feel and sound good that playing well often takes a side priority. And if they end up putting it into multiplayer, it's because they need to cover their losses, and hopefully the multiplayer component will sell a few more copies. But yeah, the gameplay had to come first, because if the gameplay is really good, even as a single player, it still becomes a shared experience. It's still social in the way that we can talk about how we play BioShock differently. We can talk about the way we do our own Fallout shelters. You know, we both have our Fallout shelters on our phones, and we show them to each other, and we laugh at each other's inventions or how interesting we've taken it.
You accidentally sold your water purification and then was surprised when your happiness went down?
And you accidentally are playing Dungeon Master. I fixed that one for you and got you Fallout Shelter. And the best part is that by us examining each other's gameplay in an environment where we're the only ones who have a say in the matter, we can even learn something about each other through the way that we even lay out the levels, how we choose color schemes, if that's a thing. I don't know enough about Fallout Shelter. But single player can be extended exponentially if the players are encouraging each other, and there are still ways to compete and cooperate with one another, even if you are alone in that world. And then as far as like quality single player experiences go, I think it's going to be cyclical. I think the more people are going to we have money to play games, but right now I don't really have the money to buy into a lot of the indie games, which is too bad for me because I know I'm missing out on a lot of good games in that regard. When I do, however, I can't wait to play a lot of indie games who I think are A, going to make sure that their gameplay is really good, and B, make sure that the story is good too. Something like Braid or Limbo. These are great games that are simple, but they're fun. And Limbo would be fun multiplayer if you have a bunch of people all trying to run through this really dangerous terrain, and then every time somebody triggers a trap, one person gets impaled, and the other guys are like, well, that was nice of him. It's like if it's randomly generated traps. See, even Limbo could be fun multiplayer if done right. If done right, and I'm done.
Well, first of all, I think going away from Dota 2 for years is the only way you're ever going to see a new hero.
Congratulations, Winter Wyvern. You are officially 300 days old.
It's sad because we have to laugh because it keeps us from crying. But I really feel like the push for multiplayer is based on wanting to make money. How do you guarantee people are going to buy your game one? They want to be part of the community. If there's a progression system, we've seen these in Call of Duty a lot as example. If there's a progression system, you want to have good gear, so when everybody else joins in, you're not struggling to get the assault rifle that actually does shit.
Yeah.
This is the main thing people want to sell us on. We unfortunately live in a society where, a good opening weekend to the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie was all it took to greenlight the sequel. It doesn't matter that after that one weekend it dropped all the way down to who the fuck gives a care. It doesn't matter that it's been ripped apart by every critic worth a damn and several critics who aren't. It's, everyone phenomenally hated it, but because it had a good enough opening weekend, we're now dealing with a sequel. And that's what a lot of these publishers want. They want instant return on their money. How do you make sure people buy your game instantly? You offer them pre-order offers, and you put in a multiplayer mode with progression, because people are going to want to have the best gear possible. They want to get on that. They want to be in when the community's strong and enjoy multiplayer for as long as possible. And again, when people join in later on because, hey, the game was on sale, well, you don't have a good pistol, so now I'm going to shoot you repetitively, and maybe one day you will learn to, level up and shoot a bunch of other noobs and get a better pistol. But until then, I win because I got in here first. And it's again, a whole publishing thing. It's we want to sell as many copies as we can immediately, and multiplayer is a very easy way to do that. Here's a multiplayer mode. No multiplayer mode lasts forever, unless you're Valve. So get in when you can.
And that's just not the way to do it.
It's like you can make a good multiplayer experience, and I don't have a problem with multiplayers at all. I love multiplayer games, but it really has to be there for more reason than just selling me immediately. If your multiplayer mode is not going to last, it's not designed to last 3 years immediately with updates, paid or not paid, then it's probably not good.
It's not even a game.
Like Call of Duty as an amazing example, like they do paid DLC for maps, and we all know from hundreds of studies that's what kills a game. If you have to pay to get new maps, then half the community is going to be on the new maps, the other half of the community is going to be old maps, and both of them are going to wonder where the hell everybody went.
And you can't look at Call of Duty and say, well, if it worked for them, it works for us. Call of Duty is an institution.
And it's also not designed to last long. Like there's a new Call of Duty every year, alternating between the regular series and the Black Ops series. So all a Black Ops game needs to do is last at maximum 2 years, and then at that point there'll be a new Black Ops game, and alternatively during that 2 year period, a regular one will come out. So they're okay with killing their own community because they're going to sell you a new one, later. I'm actually a little impressed that Overwatch has said all maps will be free because okay, that's how you make sure your community stays alive. You give them the new maps for free, so you don't have people in two different camps.
Yeah, there's something to be said about Call of Duty being disposable in the same way you expect soldiers to be disposable. That's really dark.
That's really dark.
Let's go home.
Yeah.